Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlin, and I am joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, I'm running the show today from behind the scenes, which is could be a struggle.
This is amazing. Bennett Conlin, IT extraordinaire. Really awesome to see you control everything. I'm
Oh
I'm
yeah,
really proud of the growth I've seen out of you in the last 5 minutes to get this show up and running. We had a little bit of issues with going live, but we figured it out.
I got confused. How do I make sure our Twitter handles are on there, or did they show
That's
up?
too it's too late. That
No,
was an extra
really.
step. Yeah, that was an extra step. So you just have to go in
Um,
by yourself and retweet, but because you just won't get notified now.
I'm in on the little, even on the little lower third for us, like on your screen.
Oh,
So there's.
unclick welcome into the Jamie Sports News.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, all right, all right. This is going to be a bumpy ride for those watching. Fortunately, I think a lot of people watch after the fact. Good news
I
for
will
me.
say I think this might be a bumpy ride for those listening too, as they hear us talk for 50 seconds about the lower thirds and the names. So it's gonna
That
be a
is,
bumpy ride.
that's true. That is true. Look at that. Got the ads up. Pew 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 pew.
There you go.
Firing
You
away
got the
back
ad.
here.
So take it away, Mister Three Notch Man.
Yeah, three notch. We are very excited that they stuck with us through basketball season. I'm not sure if all our listeners did, but three notch did, which is exciting stuff.
We've only had about like a 20% drop
That's
off.
not horrible, actually. Probably because Byington and the boys are cooking right now.
As what we've seen. If you're listening and you have friends that don't listen, one, tell your friends to listen to us because we're the authorized supplier of bad JMU sports takes. But also, I forgot where I was going with that. Basketball doesn't fall off as much as you would think.
Yeah.
Although when they were bad, it fell off a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. But three notch, they're sticking with us. We love
Yep,
them.
yep.
You can sign up for the Fresh Beer Club. Find out more at threenotchedbrewing.com. They have First Tap Fridays, Harrisonburg exclusive releases every Friday from brewer Nick Branson. I love it there. You love it there. Cozy. They got board games. They got pretty much everything you can possibly want out of a local brewery in Harrisonburg, in my opinion.
I think they are number one of all the local Harrisonburg breweries, and that's some stiff competition. But I do think Three Notch takes it home, and not only the fact that it's the number one in Harrisonburg, it's up there in Charlottesville, Roanoke, Virginia Beach, Richmond, every major city in Virginia that I think there's a strong contingent of JMU fans, they have a tap room that you have to check out. And each one has slightly different kind of promotions and fun things that they do. Valley Collab House is the one we talk about the most because, I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking with them every week about what's happening. So check out your local Three Notch, see what they're doing every single day. Because who knows? They may have, I mean, they have their fresh beer club, but they may have a slightly different selection. That and along with all of their fun, like, songs, they probably have First Tap Fridays or something along those lines as well.
Absolutely.
And did you know that Bet Online remains your number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season? Everything from NFL playoffs, the big game is right around the corner, to pro and college basketball. When will LeBron James break Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record? We're recording this on Tuesday at 7:01 p.m. Eastern, so by the time you're listening to this, he very well could have already broken it. And college basketball. Is UConn a fraud? Maybe. UFC, MMA, and more. Clemson's a fraud. Clemson's a fraud.
Clemson's a major fraud.
But I think UConn's in a really bad of it. We'll talk about this off air, I guess.
They're up 20 points on Marquette right now, so
Yeah, but they also didn't they lose to
they're
Georgetown?
so back. They're so. I
Didn't they
think they
lose to Georgetown?
did they.
They were in a close game.
No,
Then
it was a very close game with Georgetown.
okay. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at Bet Online. With live betting options, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable, Bet Online is truly the fastest and it's truly the easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to betonline.ag today or use your mobile device at betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus for everyone signing up and making their first time deposit. Make sure to use promo code BLEAV, that's promo code BELIEVE, to receive your 50% welcome bonus. Bet Online, where the game starts. And where
Yeah.
this podcast starts. Men's basketball won 6 of their last 7. And I'll say this, their lone loss is a loss you would have expected on the road against Southern Miss, the number 1 team in the Sun Belt.
It's not a bad loss at all. They've been playing significantly better, and I think, well, that's not entirely true, but I think if you look at their Sun Belt play here, they really only had one like conference stinker, which was sort of that home App State game is one that I feel like they should not have been getting blown out sort of
Yes.
in the early going there. They kind of made it a game, but still lost by 9. Obviously, Valpo and Coppin State are pretty disgusting, so you can't really say that about the whole season. But I think, in conference play, they have, what is it, 2 1-point losses and then a couple whatever. I mean, like they've been pretty good. They're 8-4 now in league play. I'm not disappointed in that mark at all. I think 8-4 is pretty solid for them.
8-4 is really solid, and when you look at the combined, like the points that they've lost by, 1 against Texas State, 9 against App, so 10, 11 against South Alabama, 7. So they've lost 4 games by 16 points. I don't think that's a terrible mark.
You might have to double check the math on the Southern Miss loss, but
Yep, I do indeed. I do. They lost by 13, not 7, so my math is off, and I apologize for that. But
what is it? It's only like 24 or something for 4, so it's like an average of 6 a game. Like they've been really competitive in like every Sun Belt game, but I kind of go back and forth on how I view it.
I was so off.
For me though, it's like they won the first 2, and if you told me after the Marshall win that they'd be 8-4, I'd be like, oh, that's not what I was hoping for. But then for them to lose 3 in a row and then still get it to 8-4, I did not think they would necessarily turn it around like that.
And it was kind of impressive how they did it. I mean, these last 4 games, this is their first 4-game win streak of the season against Division I opponents. And if I'm not mistaken, the first 4-game win streak against Division I opponents since Byington's 2020 year.
Yes, yeah, only the second of his tenure.
Or I guess yeah. So that's pretty amazing. And then they did that by winning 2 on the road this weekend, kind of in dominant fashion. It was a 78-73 win at ODU, and then it was a 63-57 win at App State. Both, they were close near the end, but there were large portions of that game where JMU completely dominated everything that was happening in that game. It is a little worrisome that down the stretch of both that they let those teams back into it. App had it tied, and I believe with under 2 minutes to go, it was a tie game. JMU ended up figuring things out, hitting some free throws late and winning by 6. Against ODU, they hit the shots they needed to end up winning by 5, but both of those they had 15-plus point leads at some point, I believe, in the second half. So it's a little worrisome that they came down to the end, but 2 road wins in 2 hostile environments.
Yeah, those are nice wins. And if you look at like the win probability graph or whatever on KenPom, they never really felt like it was in serious jeopardy. Like there might have been times where it like got tied late or whatever, but they were never in a point in the 2 road games against like decent conference opponents where they were like dead. Like they kind of had the edge for the majority of both games because they jumped out to hot starts, and it's kind of what you're looking for, right? To start strong and hang on to the best of their ability. But defensively, they're playing well. They're still bricking a lot of threes, but it's I don't know. They're finding ways that when they don't have great shooting performances to sort of play through it a little bit.
I'm going to touch on the standings real quick, and then we can get into kind of their shot selection and go into it. JMU is currently tied for 3rd in the Sun Belt standings. Southern Miss and Louisiana both sitting at 10-2 in Sun Belt play. Marshall and JMU tied in 3rd at 8-4. JMU has Marshall and they have Louisiana on the schedule. Very real possibility JMU can win both of those since both are at home. They can win both of those and leapfrog up the standings. Southern Miss loses a few here on the way out. The 1 seed still in play for Sun Belt Conference tournament. But most likely it will be kind of that 2 or 3 seed. But that 2 seed is very much in play because if JMU can win against Marshall and win against Louisiana, they hold the head-to-head tiebreaker, which will move them up the standings. So after what looked to be dead in the water, sitting at 2-3 in the middle of a 3-game losing streak, and all Sun Belt hopes went to die. JMU has now won 6 of the last 7 and sit very pretty for a double bye in the conference tournament.
Yeah, if you can get the double bye, that's key, right? You obviously don't have to play a couple games, so that'd be helpful. And I like their chances against pretty much anyone in the league. I don't think they're like a lock to win the conference or anything like that, or even the favorite necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think they'll have a chance, regardless of who they play, kind of late in the conference tournament. So I'm excited about the defense. I feel like the defense has really come on, and the 3-point percentage was good this week. And I should walk that back a little bit. They shot it pretty well from three. There's still some stretches where it feels like there are some tough shots or maybe some interesting shot selection, but like shout out to Julian Wooden. He hit 8 threes in those 2 games, 5 against ODU, 3 against App State. He's a big time shooter. He proved me right after almost proving me wrong there for like a 5-game stretch where he hadn't hit a 3, but he's had a chance to run a little more with Sule out, I feel like. And I like him offensively. I really like what he brings as a shooter and then also as somebody who can score from inside the 3-point line. He just feels like a really good player.
Yeah. JMU shot 43% this weekend from behind the arc. That's the number they need to be shooting. They shot 20 times against ODU, went 10 of 20 against the Monarchs. Against App State, they went 11 of 29 from behind the 3-point line. They actually shot it better from 3 than they did from 2, which might be a reason that App State got back into that game.
Yeah.
That they probably just couldn't hit their bunnies late. But kind of like you said, it did kind of feel like at times there were slower stretches. But what I really like, Noah Friedel also 0 of 6 from behind the arc against App State. And they still shot 37.9%. So that's really promising. But I think what the difference is over this 7-game streak and more specifically this 4-game winning streak, and correct me if I'm not seeing this right, it's who's taking the threes. Molson's not really taking many threes anymore. As many, or at least as many threes / bad mid-range shots. You're not seeing Amadi jack up from 3. You're not really seeing Offram jack up from 3. You're not seeing Edwards do it as much. Ian Nacho was 2 of 3 against App State, but overall he's kind of picking and choosing his spots. He's not taking contested jumpers. It seems like they all know their role a little bit more.
Yeah, they seem to be playing into it. I think that's accurate. It's like Edwards, for example, is like he kind of knows if his shot's there. Like, and if his jumper's not and he can score from 2, he does it. If he feels it a little bit from 3, he might take a couple more. But yeah, I mean, I wanted Wooden to take more threes than he is, which I think is good. Morse got injured against ODU and missed the app game, so that'll be something to monitor. His shoulder got, I guess his left shoulder got kind of banged up. Byington, I don't think we'll ever say anything clear the rest of the season on what his status is, so we just have to kind of wait on that. But yeah, obviously, if he comes in, you got another guy who can shoot. But when Molson's game against ODU is, I think, the best game he's played all year. 9 assists, no turnovers, 18 points, only took 2 threes. Like, that's pretty perfect for what you're looking for out of him, right? No turnovers. He shot it efficiently, which is not necessarily his calling card. When they can get that kind of performance, like, they're pretty good.
Yeah, and he had a good weekend overall. And after we were kind of ragging on him the weekend before, where according to KenPom, his offensive efficiency ratings were just abysmal. And yet the one of the websites you used was saying that the Takal and Noah combo is one of the most efficient duos in all of the nation, which I was scratching my head at. But then he went and proved me wrong in these 2 games. His stat line you just mentioned against ODU was fantastic. And honestly, his stat line against App State, 16 points, 4 of 8 shooting, 2 of 4 from deep, 6 of 7 from the free throw line, snagged 5 rebounds, had 3 assists, 4 turnovers. But overall, like, that's what you need out of him. And I think 4 of 8 is okay. Sometimes I don't love that he's a volume shooter, but when he's hitting it at a 50% clip, I don't mind it as much. But there are times it seems he goes a little cold. But a really good weekend. And I think this team can only go, and this might be really stupid analysis, but I think this team can only go as far as Molson lets them.
It's a key part of it. It's right, that huge trio with Friedel and Morse and Molson. Like, you kind of need 2 of the 3, or at least 1 of the 3 to play really well or contribute in a way that's maybe outside what we anticipate, you know?
I got to shout out Noah Friedel too, though, real quick, because he wasn't getting a lot of run in the final minutes of games for a
Hmm.
large portion of conference play. These last few weekends, he has been getting run in the final minutes. And while his shot might not be there, um, he's rebounding at a really solid
Yeah.
clip for a guard. He had 10 rebounds against App State. He didn't hit a shot, he didn't have a point, or I guess he had 2 points because of free throw line. But like, you can pull down 10 rebounds. I love him being out there as long as he's not kind of the Achilles heel to the defense. He had 5 against ODU, he had 4 against ULM, uh, only 2 against Coastal. But like these last 3 games, he's averaging what, 6 rebounds a game?
He's a good rebounder, and the fact that he can hit threes is really good. And then we have his other players sort of backing him up if he has an off shooting night, right? Where you've got Wooden knocking him down, Edwards knocking him down, even Ianacho and Molson. You can space the floor more, and it becomes a more dynamic offense. Now, when they have the games where they're shooting like 20%, obviously it's nice to see them attack a little more, which they do at times. But I think they're kind of figuring some stuff out. And then they only had 6 guys play 25 minutes or more. So they have narrowed the rotation a little bit. Some of that is because they have to, because Morris and Sule aren't available, right? But it's like sort of it's obviously a problem to not have those two. But at the same time, it makes them play a narrow rotation that seems to have some decent cohesion. So I'd be interested to see exactly what Byington tries to do once they ideally get those guys back. How exactly do you mix them in, right? If Sule's gone a few weeks without playing, what's his ability to sort of phase back in and not throw you out of your rhythm? It'll be kind of interesting to see how they make that work.
Yeah. And one last thing on that App State game. I think it was fantastic that Friedel only had 2 points, went 0 of 6. Mezzi only had 4 points. And his
Mm-hmm.
last bucket came with 17 minutes and 5 seconds left in the first half.
Still picked
So,
up a road win.
and you still won. And the guys that scored in double figures were Ianacho, Molson, Edwards, and Wooden. That's like a very interesting 4-man mix of scoring in double figures.
Heck yeah, it is. So are the Dukes back? Because we were talking after they go 2-0, right? Early in the season at times too, that this is, maybe an NCAA tournament team. Are we getting those same vibes? Are we getting hey, this team is going to roll through the Sun Belt, put themselves into March Madness?
Okay, last time we got really excited. We were on here in our 3-notch preview, which is coming up in a little bit, talking about how it's so JMU can go to 4-0 in Sun Belt play so easily when they were getting set to take on
Mm-hmm.
Texas State and App State both at home. And they ended up dropping them both. And then we came back on here. Okay, I know they went 0-2 that weekend, but they can go 2-0 again this weekend. And they go 1-1 against South Alabama and Georgia Southern. So I don't want to get ahead of myself because there is a part of me that is saying these are very winnable games coming up against Georgia Southern and Coastal, both on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But I think JMU loses one of them. I think they go 1-1 this weekend. However, I do think they're back. I think the double bye is very much in play. They have a tough Final Four: ODU, Louisiana, Marshall, and Georgia State. They've played Marshall and Georgia State already. Louisiana is the best slash second best team in the Sun Belt, and you just played ODU last weekend. So when you end up playing ODU again, it's not even a month removed. It's 14 days later. It's 2 weeks later when you're playing ODU for the second time. That's tough Final Four games. So you kind of got to pick up these two, but that's a long-winded way for me to say there's hope. There's hope, and I'm buying in. I'm no longer, I'm taking the lighter I had under Byington's seat and I'm blowing it out. I'm bringing it away a little bit. I think what he's done over the last 2-3 weeks is really solid.
I think I'm all the way back in, and I've sort of been trending in that direction. And now I feel dangerously on board with this team. Like, I'm thinking they could win out. I'm thinking it's a legit possibility they win the last 6.
I think so too, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself.
Well, here's what gets me excited. Is like a lot of the times you'll go on Ken Palm and a team is like favored in their last 6 and like 5 of the games are by like a point. If you look at like the projected spread in these games, it's Georgia Southern, JMU 5-point favorite, Coastal, JMU 9-point favorite, ODU, JMU 9-point favorite, Louisiana 4-point favorite, Marshall 1-point favorite, Georgia State 13-point favorite. Like none of the like there are games in there where it's like, yeah, I don't know that they'll cover, but like you're a 9-point favorite. I don't know exactly what the money line would be, but like you'd be a pretty significant favorite to win the game. I don't think it's out of the question. I think for me, 4-2 is kind of the minimum where like you win 4 of the next 6. I'm still on board going into the conference tournament. If they end up going like 3-3 or worse, I'm probably a little bit concerned. But if they keep the momentum going, they can get 4 wins. You're looking at 21 regular season wins. I'm pretty pleased with that. I'd love to see them do more. And if they do get 6, you're going into the conference tournament on a 10-game winning streak. You got a net in a position where you go win the conference tournament. You beat some of those teams, Southern Miss, Marshall, Louisiana, that have, respectable nets themselves. You're talking about a 13 seed maybe, right? And you get a 4 and you're on a whatever it'd be, 12 or 13 game win streak. You're one of the hottest teams in college basketball. Maybe you get the Zags. You go, whoop, knock them out.
And yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, it's a given. If you get Gonzaga, whoop, knocked them out. They're gone. Yeah. Drew Timmy down in the low post. No, Mezzi's on.
We got shot blockers. We got shot blockers for days. We've been saying that all year. We'd love to go up against a 2-point specialist like that. It's a perfect matchup for the Dukes.
For what it's worth, Ken Palm agrees with you. 4-2 is about what they're looking at,
which is solid, right? It'd be 12-6 in the league. Like I don't have any complaints with that. I'd be very happy. I think there'd be a lot of reasons to be happy. But if they win out, I think then you start getting a little steam. You start getting a little momentum. The other thing that I'm interested in, the two of the 3 crappiest teams left on their schedule are the next 2. Yeah. Georgia Southern's not great. Coastal's bad. Coastal's just flat out bad. So if you go get those 2, you have 4 home games. I would love to see what the fan support is. Is there enough knowledge? And I don't say this offensively, but in the community or even the student body to be oh, they're making a run at a Sun Belt title, or is it such small potatoes that people don't notice? Because I'd love to see what those crowds are like for, ODU and Louisiana Marshall, and then Georgia State's a crappy opponent, but it's also the last game of the year.
I mean, weren't the Coastal and Louisiana Monroe crowds good?
Right? They were. Yeah.
I would think they'd be good.
I think so too.
Now do the student, and again, like you said, I don't mean this offensively, but would the general student know they're in the running for a Sun Belt champion, regular season championship? Would they know that in all honesty, that Louisiana game, depending on how things shake out over the next 3 for Louisiana, could be a de facto Sun Belt championship game? There are a lot of different factors that I don't think the normal fan would know. However, I think there's enough buzz around this team, especially if they win the next 2, that those final 4 home games may be the most, this is going to sound like a 62-year-old saying this, the most lit atmosphere we've seen since UVA last season.
It's got a chance to be something. I think Southern Miss is sort of my runaway. I think they'll get it because they have a tiebreak. Even if JMU goes on a run, Southern Miss, true. 2 games up, they got the tiebreaker. I think they'll be the 1 seed. But if you finish tied 1 with them, I feel like you're taking a co-title in terms of claiming. I mean, you're not the 1 seed, but maybe you claim it. I don't know.
I think at the end of the day, just getting a double bye is the biggest thing. Yes. That's the most necessary thing. And 1 through 4, it doesn't matter how it's stacking up because I think the rest of the Sun Belt is so bad. It doesn't matter if you're playing the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Do all the teams make it in the Sun Belt?
I believe yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if you're playing 5 or 14. Those teams are all bad.
Yeah, I think the only one in the middle that's I guess Troy and South Alabama have some redeeming qualities to them, but they haven't played consistently enough to make it really a threat. It seems like I would agree that it's probably those 4 that I think will get the double bye, and those are your 4 that are sort of competing for the title. And it's exciting because we get the next month. If you're JMU, you got a chance to finish strong, and you could go from a little February or January, whatever it was, struggle bus, I guess January, little January struggle bus, to maybe being a darling Cinderella.
Here's the thing though. Can I pump the brakes on you a little bit?
No.
Okay. I'm going to try to, and let's see what happens. There's a stronger chance they lose their first game in the Sun Belt tournament than they do winning the Sun Belt tournament. So just mentally prepare yourself. They could go 6-0. They could win out. they could be sitting pretty at 2 in the Sun Belt. There would not be any part of me that would be shocked that they lose the first game of the Sun Belt tournament.
My guess, I think you would, what it gets, once you get in, it would be the quarters if you have a double bye.
This
I
is how I
think
know how important this is to you. Your hand movements are getting your hand
I'm sort
movements
of
don't.
doing brackets in my head. I think they'll get through the quarters if they get a double bye. So they would win that first game they play, and then the semis and the finals would be legitimately hard, right? If you're going up against Louisiana, Southern Miss, or Marshall on a neutral floor, it's going to be hard. You're also, I think Pensacola is just probably significantly closer to a. Well, I don't know. Do you think anyone travels to that? Like, do you think Southern Miss or Louisiana are going to have like legitimate?
We were
semis?
talking about traveling to that. So like I think there
I
are
just
fans
feel like
that
the JMU
travel.
section is going to be so small.
I don't think we'll travel. Like I don't think JMU will travel well. I think there'll be a larger Southern Miss contingent, Louisiana
Yeah.
contingent,
Yeah.
even Marshall contingent.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that atmosphere is actually like. But I don't know. I'm excited for it. I think the rest of the season they got a chance to go on a little run. So I guess we got to do a little preview action.
Oh, 3-Notch Weekly preview? Is it time for the okay? It's time for the 3-Notch Weekly preview, breaking down another road trip after picking up 2 huge wins on the road last weekend. JMU hits the road yet again to take on Georgia Southern and Coastal Carolina, 2 of the worst teams in the Sun Belt. Georgia Southern comes in on a 4-game losing streak. They've lost 6 of their last 7. Their only win was against Georgia State. Georgia Southern, the former employer of Mark Byington. This is the first time Byington will be back down in Statesboro, Georgia. Since he was hired, Brian Berg has taken over, and the Eagles have not done a lot. They are the 4th best offense in conference play only, but their defense struggles. They allow a lot of points. They play at a medium-paced tempo, but they really just aren't good defensively. They don't turn you over. They don't steal the ball. They allow threes at an extremely high rate. They're 11th in the conference in three-point percentage against at 34%. So JMU has the blueprint to take down Georgia Southern. And then game 2, JMU just played Coastal on January 26th, and they won 75-69 at home. They now head down to Conway, South Carolina to take on a Coastal team that has lost their last 5 games, including a terrible loss against Chicago State. They're one of the worst teams defensively, and I know we just talked about this. JMU should blow them out of the gym like they did before. I was a little surprised that it was so close last time these 2 teams played. JMU should destroy them. Their offense isn't bad, 196th in the nation, but they have the 330th worst defense in the nation of 363 teams. Bennett, the floor is yours. What do you expect out of this weekend? I assume a 2-0 week.
I think so. That's my expectation. You've kind of got a perfect scenario, I feel like, if you're JMU, where Georgia Southern and Coastal, you can make an argument that they're sort of jockeying for seeding at the bottom of the Sun Belt, but it's not a lot going on there. I'm not sure exactly what their motivation would be in sort of early to mid-February on a gigantic losing streak, other than like, hey, let's maybe gear up for a late run in the conference tournament. But I think right now is a lull for them mentally. Those 2 opponents where, hey, we're not playing well. Let's figure it out in like 2 weeks. So I think if you're JMU, you got a great chance to jump on them. I cannot imagine either atmosphere is going to be great. So I think if you're JMU and you can stay focused and sort of execute what you're doing defensively, you should be in a great position to get 2 more. And the games mean a lot. We've talked about some of these sort of mediocre opponents, and it feels like JMU maybe doesn't focus quite as much. These games really matter because if you get them, you have a 4-game homestand to finish the year to go make a run.
Yeah. Huge. Also, hilarious to me that Cliff Ellis is like 100 years old, and they're like, look at this legend of coaching. We were texting about it during the Coastal game. Here's can I make a request to all broadcasts out there and all like media members? Can we not hype up a coach who's been at a school for 50 years? That doesn't mean he's good. That means that program is okay with mediocrity, and that's all that coach will bring them.
Hey, what, he had 1 good year at Auburn, I guess. Is that sort of his?
I think. And he's
He
been
has a lot
for
of
like
wins.
20
He's
years.
had some apparently some decent years. Let me go through here. he's an okay coach. Like he had Clemson was doing some stuff, Auburn's doing some stuff. Coastal, like the last decade, has been pretty irrelevant though.
That's what I'm like. Like if Coastal was okay, like Coastal clearly is okay with mediocrity. Like they should have fired him 5 years ago and like restarted, but instead they're like, well, the only thing we can hang our hat on is having a legendary coach.
Made the second round of the NCAA tournament 2013-14, qualified again the next season. Since then, they have not played in an NIT or an NCAA tournament. They've played a lot of those like three CBI appearances since then, which is awesome. Being like, yeah, we'll go back. Sign us up. Which I'm laughing now in JMU, like in 4 weeks, will probably be in the CBI. But a pretty funny little setup there that they would agree to playing a bunch of those. I am with you that there's a lot of like what they've done is unbelievable. It's like, well, not recently though.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Do we want to move on from the happiness to the sadness of women's basketball?
They've lost 4 of 6.
They've lost 4 of 6. They've lost 3 of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Both
That's
of
not
which
good.
aren't good marks, especially because this 3 of 4 streak comes off the heels of the Troy win.
Yep.
Like after the Troy win, you were sitting there with what, one conference loss with a win over the next best team, and you not dominated, but like you won a game that in past it seemed like JMU had found ways to lose, and now after a 1-1 weekend, you just lost to Georgia Southern, who's not a good team. You're sitting at 8-4 in conference play, tied with 5 other teams for second. If you slip up one more time this season, you just lost your double bye.
I think they got a little room for error. A little bit because
maybe
there's
one loss. Maybe 5 losses gets you the double bye still.
They're in a 5-way tie for second. So I think that's right. So you have to be of those 3 teams, if my brain is working.
Yes.
So so you get 3 of the teams will get double byes and 2 of them won't. Yeah, you'd love it if you could only lose, what are you, 6 left? You go 5-1, or I think 4-2 might get them in, depending on what other teams.
They should go 6-0.
It's a tough slate the rest of the way, though.
You beat Troy.
I know, but
dominant.
But they're broken now. They're they don't look right at all. And I was looking at it. So in the 3 out of their last 4, whatever, those 3 losses, they've allowed teams to shoot 50% from 3. So that's kind of like all right, like they had kept themselves in pretty much every game with defense, right? Obviously the Troy game is sort of an exception where they played really well offensively. But you look at like their other games, like defense was awesome and they were sort of dominating with defense. And they've had a little lull here where teams are just nailing threes against them, which is not great, which I hope is a little bit of a blip where like maybe we're giving up a little bit too much room. Maybe they're hitting shots at a higher clip than they normally do. So I think it's fixable. But at the same time, if you go into the Sun Belt tournament or you like blow this double bye and you're leaking water, you don't have momentum, it's going to be a really difficult way to end a season and a tough way to sort of swallow things. I mean, a few games ago, it was sort of the Kiki Jefferson is the player of the year campaign, and we're going to finish in the top of the league. You finish like 5th, Kiki's not winning that award, like regardless of stats. And I think there are others that have good stats too. Like I think she has a strong case for player of the year, but if you finish 5th, like I don't see that happening. So it's kind of a disappointing stretch here.
And not only are they allowing teams to hit threes at an insane clip over these last 3 games of 4, but they're letting like one player just dominate them. Against Georgia State, it was Nyla Jean, who went 6 of 11 from the field, 5 of 7 from deep. Against Coastal Carolina, it was Asia Blunt. She finished with 20 points, went 6 of 10 from the field, but 8 of 8 from the free throw line. Just absolutely 8 inside against JMU. Against Georgia Southern, what's her first name? It was Taryn Ward, who went off for 25 points, but 11 of those points came from the free throw line. She was only 5 of 15. There's been kind of an issue that teams are hitting their threes and getting to the line at a really high clip.
Yeah, the defense has not been where it needs to be. And I still think Kiki's like stats maker the favorite, but I could easily see if Troy kind of runs away with it, you find someone on Troy because they've got some ballers that we saw in person that could make a good run at it. So it's super disappointing. And the stretch they have coming up here. So there's 5 teams for second, which is kind of hilarious that many teams could be 8-4 in league play. But what is it? I think like Louisiana is one of them. Texas
Yep.
State's one of them. ODU is one of them. Like they
Yep.
play all those teams. So it kind of does get to a point like where you're talking where you can't lose more than like 1 or 2.
I mean,
Like
you can lose some of those,
as
but
long as
you can't lose any of them against the teams you're tied with. Because then,
yeah.
then that's 2 losses, right? That's a loss on your record, but that's also a loss in the. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to flick you off as I was counting off my fingers. That's also a loss head to head. So then you'd have to win 2 games to like leapfrog them. So if you're sitting in a 4-way tie tied for third and you lost to all of these guys, but you all have the same record, sucks to suck, you're the odd man out because you don't have the head to head.
Right, you want some of those tiebreakers. So they like ODU, they beat at home, so they have a little edge there. I forget who some of the other teams are that have the 4 losses, but like I don't think they played Louisiana or Texas State yet. So those are like huge games, right? Because they could kill you in the tiebreaker. So I don't know. We'll see if they can kind of figure it out and get things rolling. I would like them to, because when they play their best, I think they have a good chance to win the league or at least contend for it. It'd be nice to see them get to an NCAA tournament. It's sort of the one thing they haven't done under Coach O. So we'll see what happens there. It's a little pressure on for sure. What they got Louisiana Thursday at home. That's a huge game. Arkansas State stinks Saturday. So like they should win that game.
So did Georgia Southern.
I think Georgia Southern's decent. They clipped them in Harrisonburg too, and they can score. So I'm less concerned about Georgia Southern, more concerned about the coastal Georgia State losses. But at the same time, I don't know. You don't really love to be like, hey, we're the best team in the league, but you lose both meetings with Georgia Southern, including a double-digit road loss. Like, like it starts to add up where maybe Georgia State's competitive. I mean, Georgia Southern's competitive, but they're not. They probably shouldn't sweep the season series.
Yeah. So what's in the water? What is it in Harrisonburg? Is it just defense? Like, is that all it is?
I got to go back and listen to Coach O's this week's press conference, because last week he was saying there's something in the water, like something is kind of up, and I got to find out what it is, which is not really what you love to hear in February.
Well, I kind of chalked it up at first to the McDaniel injury, how she like dislocated a finger, and then for the next 2 games, which were the 2 games they lost, she had a huge bandage on her hand, and I believe she still had that this week. So maybe it's some of that. Kozlova got banged up, and then she came back.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just kind of the injuries. But, man, it feels like every year we think women's basketball is amazing, and then near the end of the conference season, they kind of stumble.
They've also been horrendous from 3 during the losing streak, which I think played like the gap between 3-point shooting percentages, them and their opponent in those losses, is like 30%. Like they're shooting like 20%. The opponents are shooting like 50. So maybe you can chalk it up to that. But we've talked about that with the men's team. Like it's kind of hard to totally fix like 3-point issues. You know what I mean? There's no like, hey, become elite shooters. Like if Peyton McDaniel isn't hitting 6, like what do you do to actually fix it?
It's also more annoying with the women's team because you have what looked to be one of the most dominant post players in the entire conference in Kozlova, and you have Kiki Jefferson, the master of the mid-range and the interior, and then you're just kind of like dying by the 3.
They also did a nice job. I was looking at it. I think like a lot of key contributors had 4 fouls. I think Jamie had 4 players get 4 fouls against Georgia Southern, including Kozlova. Kozlova, this is a kind of a wild stat line. She had 6 points and 7 rebounds in 13 minutes, but she had 4 fouls.
Did you say that your hot take with Kozlova is just to play her as much as you can until she fouls out?
Kind of. And Goodman did a nice job. She had 5 points and 7 rebounds in 27 minutes. So she kind of came in and and took some of that. But Kozlova, her level is kind of above whatever anyone else on the team in the post can do. So yeah, that's kind of my hot take. Is like if she gets two, I don't care. Like run around and see what happens with it. But obviously in that one, if she's only played 13 and has 4 fouls, that probably would have led to a very quick foul out.
Yeah.
And Goodman's like, Coach, I don't get a breather ever. And you're like, no, that's sorry about that.
Go ultra small to give Goodman like a 2-minute rest. Yeah, so what's up next for women's? We got that next. We'll break that down next. The women's team, though, they got Louisiana and Arkansas State this weekend, like you said. I just remembered you said that.
Louisiana
truly
good,
think-
Arkansas State not good.
Yeah, I truly think, though, they got to win. Louisiana's a must-win. Is it too early to call it a must-win?
I think it's in that range because you look at Texas State and ODU as some of those other 4-loss teams, both those on the road. So like a home game against one of the 4-loss gigantic Tide teams, you might need that if you're looking at a double bye, like because that gives you maybe a little cushion to drop one to like ODU or something.
And just to put everything in a little bit more perspective, 5 teams tied for second at 8-4 in conference play. Then there's 2 more teams tied right behind them at 7-5.
I didn't realize there were 2 and 7-5.
So there are 7 teams.
Yeah,
jockeying for like
3 spots. So that kind of does become that. And if you drop to 5 with some of those other teams, I think the Louisiana one, because it's at home, could possibly qualify in that must win. I don't think that would be a stretch given what they have the rest of the way. And then Arkansas State's so bad that one's a must win too. Like you can't lose a home win to Arkansas State. That would be kind of killer.
Those 2 teams tied at 7-5 in conference play, Marshall and Georgia Southern.
That's wild. Yes. Okay. So they play.
You got it. This is a must win. This Louisiana game is a must win.
What is App?
App is, drum roll please, 4-8.
Okay. So then those 2 games, Arkansas State and App, feel really winnable. Your other 4, 3 of them are against 8-4 teams, and one is what, Marshall 7-5.
Yeah,
that's nuts. So there's like, I don't know. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about they're probably going to win the Sun Belt, and now like they need to turn it on to get a double bye.
Yeah, if they lose,
that's crazy.
I really think if they lose any more than 1 game, they are not getting a double bye.
I think they could maybe get away with 4-2.
You know what? They just got to go. If they go 6-0 and handle their business, they'll have the double bye.
Yes, it would be nice to see them go on a little bit of a
heater
run here. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right. Moving on from women's basketball then to this lower third that you're just so excited for. Can you read it out loud for us?
Yeah, it's a lot of words. Rank the hot seats. Marlon Eikenberry, Coach O, and a couch cushion that's just been sat on.
Number 1,
mm-hmm.
Eikenberry.
I agree.
Number 2, is this from my perspective or is it from what I think the athletic department?
This is from your perspective.
Okay, Eikenberry, Coach O, a couch cushion.
Oh man, I would do couch cushion too.
No. From the athletic department, yes, you're right. I think so. But from Jack Fitzpatrick's perspective, Coach O. If this season ends in a meltdown, come on.
Yeah, they at least got to put themselves like back in the mix. Like I think you got to get the double bye. You got to be in the mix. You don't necessarily have to win the Sun Belt.
I think you have to make the championship game though.
It would be anything less would be disappointing. I mean, you can't to go through Kiki Jefferson's whole career without an NCAA tournament appearance would really be devastating.
That was my exact point.
Yeah.
Without winning without a conference championship berth.
Yeah, that stinks.
That's why he's number 2.
We hate to see that.
Eikenberry, though, his seat is on fire. There's I don't know how he's still alive.
Yeah, we got to talk quick spring sports because I did not realize that they had they start this week.
Yeah, they do. Baseball starts up here in a couple of weeks. Charlotte's opening day is the 17th, so I imagine
that's same with baseball. We got softball Friday.
I forget softball starts so much quicker. Softball in the Sun Belt, baby.
Can't wait for that one. Picked to finish 5th.
Yeah, that's not surprising. They had a bad year last year.
Overly surprising. The other thing I'll say, both national and local softball coverage, understandably limited. But at the same time, I have no idea what to expect. Like, I don't think there's like the coverage is like it'll be like, Lauren Laporte will say that they're having a good fall. You know what I mean? Like, there's not like someone tell me if they're gonna be good because I don't know, and I feel like other people might be in the know, especially internally. Like, who's gonna play? I know Hannah Shiflett's gonna play, right? She's a star. She was talking with the Breeze. She wants to be like a first team All American player. Sweet goal. She wants to be the best player in the Sun Belt. I think that's like she's going to be one of the best, no doubt. Alyssa Humphrey's going to pitch a bunch. All right, like what else is going to happen? So I guess we just sort of have to find out Friday and beyond because I haven't read or seen a lot about like what to actually realistically expect.
Yeah, last season, just a quick recap of what happened last year. Alyssa Humphrey led the team in innings pitched with 130 and a third, and she had a 3.92 ERA. Alexis Bermudez was second on the team with 92 innings pitched, had 3.73 ERA. Bermudez, though, graduated, was a redshirt senior, so she's gone. And so the next person up, Meredith Wells, a sophomore pitcher from Daleville, Virginia, had a 4.59 ERA in those 29 innings. So expect a heavy dose of Alyssa Humphrey. And if I'm not mistaken, Humphrey is a pure pitcher.
She is, and then like I think Meredith transferred. So
Oh,
then you got they
she did,
added
yeah.
they added a Georgia transfer, but I don't think she really played at Georgia. And then freshman, I think it's Kyla or Kayla Berry. I'll have to get the pronunciation guide, hopefully here soon. And I think someone had her as like a top 100 freshman to watch. Like I think she's pretty highly regarded. But again, I don't know. So I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know what what they're gonna look like. And they also added Brittany Hook, who's a graduate transfer from South Florida, but I don't know that if she's expected to be like, I mean, she had, I guess, at South Florida, she played 3 seasons and had 12 strikeouts. So they obviously weren't using her a ton. So, like, I don't know exactly what that means for. And then I guess she also can play outfield. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And I want
Yeah.
to know because I love this team. It just feels like I have no idea. And then obviously on a more serious note, I would be interested in coverage around like the emotions of this year, right? It's the first Friday's the first game they played since Lauren Burnett's death, and then they'll obviously come home and have their first home games since that horrible event. So it's going to be interesting to see how the community supports them. I imagine they'll have a ton of community support. They always do. But yeah, interested to hear more about this team, what they're going to look like, and also what it's like to just even like play again after everything that went on last year. So a lot of interest for me with the softball team and hoping that we can get some increased coverage here. Understandably too, that we do not have a lot, right? With like they're not a top 25 team. And then if you're like a local media reporter, both teams, basketball teams are in the heat of conference season. So you're probably not hammering out like detailed softball or even baseball things for the weird sickos like you and me who love those Olympic sport breakdowns.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Can't believe it's almost here. I'm scrolling through baseball's roster too. So many new faces, man.
Oh, we got to do it quick. I guess we'll do more next week, but like they got to show me something. Baseball's got to show me something here.
Oh, 1,000,000%. And the fact this team didn't do anything last year is sorry, let me stop. A very inexperienced catcher's room, one sophomore, two freshmen. Um, Carson Bell comes back, Kyle Novak, Fenwick Trimble, um, kind of names that you may have heard of last year, Mason Dunaway, but a lot of new names. Liam Grubbs, who's been a consistent guy out there on the bump, but I mean, just so many new names here that I'm scrolling through and I'm like, this is a 57% new roster.
I just have a lot of questions, a lot of doubts. I don't know. Just feels like every time they got some stuff going in years past, they would quickly follow that up with a disappointing showing. Like, and they're not horrendous. Like, worth noting that they're not like this terrible program. They're just like impressively mediocre, and was a little confused, to be honest with you, by some of the fans I feel like we interacted with last year that were like, oh, moving to the Sun Belt is going to be a big help because of the increase in competition. Huh? Why would that help?
No, JMU is a bad, like they're bad at baseball. Like, I'll say that. You're in one of the hotbeds of the country in terms of recruiting, in terms of talent. Like, in all honesty, Virginia and the Valley have some of the best high school talent at least in Virginia. You should be one of the top teams in Virginia. You were 27 and 26, and you're telling me you had a top prospect in the MLB who is going to be in the majors within 3 years. You had Travis Reefsnyder, who raked in the Valley. You had Trey Dabney, who raked in the Valley. You've had a bunch of guys in the Cape. You've had all of this awesome experience. You've had 15 pitchers, I may be exaggerating a little bit, who got drafted into the MLB. And you were 27 and 26 a year ago. In 2021, let's see, maybe they were a little bit better. Nope, 11 and 17. Let's see, 2019, 2020 doesn't count because of COVID. You know, they had all that talent. 31 and 26, that's really good. Oh, wait, 11 and 13 in conference. This is not a good team. This is a team that is vastly underperformed for the entire time. This team has the opportunity to be great. In the Sun Belt, they should get better, but they're going to get left in the dust. This team has to rebuild from ground zero, and they have so far refused to, but that's the only way to get good, and this team just doesn't.
Yay. I love that rant.
One of many.
Got to improve. Got to see it this year against quality teams. I think that's fair. They feasted a little bit, boosted their records on some low level teams. They got a decent slate this year. Obviously, the Sun Belt's a challenge. Let's see something from them. I think they're picked to finish 6th in their division or something. Kind of checks out. They're not really expected to be good. I don't think they're going to be good. So we'll see how that plays out. Probably got you fired up. Lacrosse is expected to be good again, not in the Sun Belt. They're in the American. They're top. I think they were like 12th or something in a preseason poll. They're supposed to be a top 15
they're good.
Team again. Schedule, as you would expect, is very much loaded every year. So, yeah, they're kind of going to do what we expect them to do, I would think, which is like make the NCAA tournament and be a tough out. I think for the national championship season, hopefully I'm not getting too far ahead of myself, kind of feels like an outlier. I don't think they're going to be like a consistent national title team. I think they'll be a consistent, like, we make the tournament and then like 1 or 2 things break their way and they maybe get a recruit who's better than their, average level, and maybe they make another run at it. Championship team was stacked. Like, it's hard to replicate that, especially when you're not like,
when you're not recruiting that talent every single year. Right. And like, they did schedule Johns Hopkins again, or not again, but like, I think that's who they lost to last year in the NCAA tournament.
That sounds right. Or they played him, right? For sure.
Yeah. Well, so interesting that they brought him back on their schedule this year at home.
And they like always open with North Carolina, which is just sweet, where it's like, oh yeah, why not just open with those guys?
And they always have that Sparks Maryland like tournament thing, but it's never a tournament. It's just a 1 game, and it's always against UConn.
That's always fascinating. They got a cool
home slate. Maryland and Ohio State and Florida. Florida came the national championship season. They played Florida in the NCAA tournament at home. Crushed them.
Look at this home slate they have here: Maryland, Ohio State, Johns Hopkins, Florida, UVA, ODU, Richmond, Cincinnati. That's what I'm looking for out of football.
Do you think Byington can have a word with them too and try to figure out how they scheduled their?
We need to do that in a joking way and tweet that at Shane or something. And be like, if Lacrosse can do it, why can't Byington get? Why there's no reason Ohio State and Maryland shouldn't be coming here back to back. Oh man, that's awesome though.
What other sports?
We got golf starting up here soon.
Tennis.
We know we're a big golf podcast. Tennis has already been going. The women's team has a really hard schedule. So
awesome.
It's going to be a busy spring.
Let's go. Hopefully baseball puts it together and they find themselves in Omaha.
It's time for them to do that.
Not with this coaching staff.
Well, yeah.
All right, for Bennett Conlin, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you guys for tuning into the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and remember, drink plenty of three-notched beer if you're of age. See ya.